It's Ohio State week. I'll probably keep saying this for the rest of the year, but not exactly what we envisioned would be talking about the vibe of this week heading into this game. Is this big game conversation still, guys? Is this still big game football for Penn State football? Not necessarily where I plan to start the show, and I don't even know if I want you to answer that question. Just something that popped into my mind of like, this is obviously a game against the number one team in the country. Penn State fans have now, at least in the chat here, been talking about how if this is a 7-point loss, be very happy about that. But there's always things going on with Penn State football off the field. We're going to be talking about the coaching search today. And, of course, Terry Smith spoke about the matchup on Monday. We'll be getting through that in between the lines. Our esteemed guests today on the show, Sean Fitz and Nate Bauer. Nate, I want to start with you. People are getting restless. People are getting so restless about the coaching search. They want it to be done now. They want it to be done now. They don't want to open their Christmas presents later. They want it now. What can you tell them about the process?
They're probably going to have to wait for a little while. It takes some time, right? I mean, just in general, I think that there's maybe a little bit of a miscalculation of yes, expediency is important. You would like to do this as quickly as you can, but there are certain elements that are part of this that kind of preclude that. And the reality is, it is not a thing that you just do, right? Like, oh, hey, this guy agreed, and so Penn State's got its next head football coach. No, this is a big deal, a big hire. All of the ingredients have to be right. The negotiations have to go right. And you have to make sure that it's the right fit. And, I think this is maybe some of the language that Pat Kraft used at the beginning of this. I honestly, I can't remember, but like, you want to cast a wide net. You want to make sure that you're considering all of the possibilities that, lend themselves to getting the guy that is going to have success in the role. So it's going to take a little bit of time moving forward. I'm sorry. It's not going to be done by the end of this weekend.
Well, one of the reasons why fans are very upset, and some are, we use the term freaking out. I think there is a little bit of that, is that they are they're leaking recruits in the class of 2026 Fitz. You and I did a video yesterday about the biggest name outside of Kevin Brown in the class, according to us and our opinion of him, Jasir Rogers. Not even the latest one to decommit from the class as of today. So what's going on there? And is this sustainable for Penn State in 2026?
Well, first off, Nate, the shade this morning looks really good. Your tribute to Brian Kelly is showing through. Second, you've got a couple different things working with the 2026 class. And check that video out if you get a chance, because it's not just talking about Jasir Rogers flipping to Oklahoma. It's also talking about how you should approach the 2026 class. And that is by consuming the content, of course, but also understanding that this is the situation that is we consider collateral damage right now. You're not looking to make a hire to get a class of 2026 in, because it doesn't fundamentally change what you're going to do on the field next year. You'd like to. I mean, all things considered, you'd love to do that. You'd love to be in place for the 2026 signing day. That way you're in place for the portal. That way you're in place for trying to keep as many of those guys as you want to keep around, because that would be all wonderful. But Nate, as I believe you called it a Disney movie going into the season, that would be the Disney movie scenario. So you're looking at that. And then last night, Darryl Carey steps away from his commitment. He was safety committed from DeMatha. Was considering Penn State and Maryland originally. I think he'll keep Penn State in the back of his mind, but guys are reaching a spot where they're crossing that line where they're like, all right, I can't wait around anymore. I got to, take a look at my options, take official visits. And it makes sense, right? Like those guys have to look out for themselves, because number one, there's no guarantee that they'll have a spot here, even though they'll probably have a spot here. But it's a tough rock and a hard place for those guys, because I know a lot of them want to be at Penn State. I think Carey included. Penn State's got a wonderful tradition with DeMatha, and he looks like a really good DeMatha safety. We know that I'm very high on DeMatha safety. So, Nate, you had your hand raised.
I do. I have
I apologize for that, but go ahead.
Yeah, I have questions. Okay. And I know that things are different now, dramatically different, and you may not know the answers to this, so I apologize in advance.
Love live questions that I'm not prepared for. Great, go for it.
Yeah, that's
it's not me.
Yeah. Today
we have imaging for that.
Yeah. All right, here we go. Bill O'Brien, when he left, it was New Year's Eve was because I remember I was at dinner. He left on New Year's Eve. James Franklin was hired on January 14th. And signing day would have been 2.5 weeks, maybe after that.
With no December signing period for those following at home.
Right. So it was a February signing period. He brought 14. Is that ish?
I'm gonna have to look through, but he brought I think it was a dozen. But yeah.
Okay. So that's the first one, because I do think people are
you
maybe
can
getting
with, if you bring in a guy that's been a head coach elsewhere, you can backfill with those commits, right? Is what you're saying.
With those commits and really your roster in a lot of ways, right? Transferring as well. Also, there are, and again, apologies, there are no more letters of intent, correct?
There are papers that you sign in December. Do they bind you to, like, there's nothing stopping you from hitting the transfer portal in January when you get here, or even before that, really. So does it matter? No, it doesn't.
So like that whole, like, there's, it feels to me like people are getting hung up as though December 3 to 5 is this hard deadline that you've got to have a coach, and you got to have one by really the last week and a half of November to be able to round those things into shape. I don't think, not that it's not a factor, not that it's not something that they want. I'm sure that they would love to have somebody by then, and they would love to have somebody by the beginning of December. But this idea that it's like a guidepost that you have to follow, I think is, I just think it's misguided at this point in the process.
Absolutely.
Well,
yeah.
Speaking to Fitz,
okay.
Just like going back to that conversation about 2014, it's a different sport. And it's a different sport now this year, most likely, than it was 3 years ago. And so there is this aspect of, I'm guilty of this too, what you know as precedent and what you're familiar with, the rhythms, the importance of those rhythms are all still concrete in your mind. But as we said, I think years ago, when we went into this NIL and transfer portal era, everything is going to be changing. Conference realignment. All the rules keep changing. You and Fitz, you and Ryan were talking yesterday about a rule that's been changing that we're going to be talking about later this week, that I think it happened recently. Like, these things keep moving. And so I kind of get it why fans might think that, but also that's kind of why we're here, to just be like, hey, these are the things, these are the points you need to know about. And it's not exactly what you thought going forward, or what you thought previously is not what's going to happen going forward.
So a week ago, the NCAA recruiting calendar showed a quiet period, I believe, from December 8th to the 17th or something of that nature. So quiet period is when you can actually visit on campus. You can't go see them at their home. Coaches are not on the road, but players can come visit during that quiet period. Ryan pulled up the calendar a day or two ago, and that is now a dead period. And that was done without any fanfare. So that sort of scenario that we laid out last week of, you don't have to sign, but if you don't sign, you can always visit with the new coach or visit wherever you want to visit in that December 8th to 17th. Well, that's gone now, apparently. Like, and again, there's been, to my knowledge, unless it happened this morning, no announcement by the NCAA that they wiped that out. But it was one of those things that was put into play mostly because the transfer portal window would have been in that time period originally, and then they changed it. So I think this is all not a make up rules as we go situation, but it is the NCAA. So it's kind of the par for the course there. But you're looking at a different scenario there where you can't make it onto campus. Now, for the guys that have been to campus dozen times, most of those guys in the class have been here a lot. Does that matter? Not exactly, but also you're going to pass up that first signing day, pass any options that you have. And some guys will be good enough where it doesn't matter, but some guys will lose that opportunity to flip to somewhere else and sign somewhere December 3rd through 5th. So it's kind of like just walking on a wire there if you're a 2026 guy right now. But I agree with Nate. Like, it's an arbitrary deadline that I think we're trying to there's a lot of manifesting and willing going on here to speed this thing up, but I don't think it's necessarily the number one right way to go about it if you're trying to find the right guy, and number two, the timing if you're finding a guy that's actually a Power 4 head coach and winning, or a Power 4 coordinator and playoff bound. Like then, yeah, I don't think that's the I don't think it's worth it to put yourself in that situation. But I agree with Nate. Like the end of November would be wonderful. It's just a matter of being the right guy, and right now, we're going to see what kind of probably in the next 6 weeks, how Pat Kraft is able to sell this, because it is a big deal to fire a coach who's won a lot to turn it into this guy can come in and win more. Cause that's the overall statement here, right? It's not about, the aggressiveness and the transfer. It's about winning more than James Franklin. And I think everybody's looking at these hot boards and looking at these things saying, it's not a given that that's going to happen, even though this season was obviously out to pasture.
So there's a conversation. I'm going to derail us and sidestep us for just 1 second here in the chat. Travis Green wants to retreat into the glory of yesteryear. He says, we need to get back to leave the flash and get back to blue-collar football. Hire a coach that brings back the players who play for the school, not for NIL. Because there's obviously this vein in all of college football and fans that want players to play for the same reasons that fans root for the team. And this is I think a large part of Penn State football over the last decade. So is that possible, guys? Is that a possibility that Penn State could be a winner with de-emphasizing NIL and not recruiting players using money? And I'm not trying to specifically put those words in Travis's mouth, but that seems to be the point here, is that flash equals money, and those players aren't real football players. So is that a realistic thing, Nate?
Yeah, I think, and this is speaking more generally, but I just think that there are two conversations that are happening from the same people, right? And the object of their ire is misplaced, right? On the one hand, people are acknowledging this is the NFL, this is pro, win, right? 4-21, all of the big game stuff. Penn State was not going to get over the top under James Franklin, and that was demonstrated over 12 years. Fine. And then you have a lot of the same people, I think, who yearn for, are wistful for this idea of like college football as something that it just is. It doesn't even resemble this anymore. It's not a thing. And you can be sad about that. That, like, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with, wishing for the days of, right, players that went to class, right, like actually trudged across class in the snow, uphill, both ways, all that stuff, right? And I'm not even making light of it. That was a thing. That was an era of college football, but that just went away when there were billion with a B dollar contracts signed for television rights that transformed the sport and brought NIL into the picture and all of those things. I mean, it's just, if you're okay with 8-4 and a consistent team every year, like this is the hard one. You had that.
That's like what I was saying.
Penn State was as close to that version of football, of college football, as existed in the sport outside of maybe Army, right? Maybe Stanford. Like it was trying to dance on that line of being competitive in the highest spaces, but also clinging to some of those things that were important to Penn State, that were important to Penn State's identity. And like all of that, I'm not saying Penn State won't try to lean into what it has been in the past. It will, but like a lot of that stuff is dead. It's over. It is the cycle of cycling has begun. They are going to cycle through coaches. They are going to cycle through athletic directors. They are like a 12-year head coach at Penn State. You're not going to see that. It's not going to happen again. Like transfer portal stuff, players that fans gravitated towards because they developed through the years, started as a 4-star and didn't play a whole lot his freshman year and became a senior. Like, nope, cut bait. That like, if you are not producing right out of the gates, if you are not somebody that they foresee as a sure thing, you're gone. You're gone. They're going to the portal. They're going to bring in other players. That's what it is.
Where you find those, I was just going to say, where you find those veteran players are players that have been producing at a different school and maybe even a lower level that come in and produce for you as seniors. Like those seniors that are maybe not going to the NFL but are good college football players, you're going to find those other places in the transfer portal. Offensive linemen, defensive linemen to a certain degree. Obviously not game changers, but guys that can backfill the part of your roster. Yeah, you're seeing, like, even this Ohio State team, there are players. C.J. Donaldson. Is C.J. Donaldson materially different than he was at West Virginia? No, but he's a senior that can go with their freshman running back and provide them some stability in their run game and can get you the yards you need. And so there is a place for those veteran players, but it's not on your team. It's on whatever team they go to find to play for later in their career.
It's not even, you use the word backfill. And I do think that that's what Penn State tried to do is this precision pin, like, you need this. We're not going to go too far astray, but just fill in where you can. Nope. Now it is, can you find a better player in the transfer portal than the one that you have? Then, like, not even depth pieces that can start over the guy that you currently have on the roster. Can you? How much does it cost? How much is it worth? Like, those are all of the things that a GM, which will be hired with this, with the head coach. These are all the things that a GM is going to have to figure out and work through. But that is going to be the approach, and it's one that I'm not even sure you can make an argument against. Right? It was a shortcoming. Yeah. Of Penn State specific to this year in a team that you saw on the field.
This is the NFL model. This is every year. And it's not fundamentally different than what the team was doing. It was saying it a different way. We're going to go out every year and recruit players to take your job. It's your job to stop them from doing that. This is just that on a shorter timeline. It's a microwave of production, which is absolutely what happens at the NFL. And it is a shame. There is a shame in a lack of development. I think some of the best and most consistent NFL teams are more patient. They do try to develop young talent, and they do go about coaching and teaching in a way that is more similar to a college team. But it is not by any means a 5-year program. Like, it is, you got a couple years, we're going to work with you, and then if you don't, like, we're going to find somebody else to play immediately. And during that time process, like, you might have to have a role on special teams or somewhere on the roster, but this isn't a place where you just come and get an education. There is production tied with the money that's involved, and there's production tied with you being on this roster. So I appreciate you taking us down that road. Appreciate you illuminating that, because I think it's important in the transition towards what we have as our sport now, and to make everyone feel better about it. Fitz, can you tell us what's on tap at Anti-Fragile Brewing Company in downtown State College? Just give everybody a nice palate cleanser.
Great. It's a great spot to cleanse your palate, if you will. Now, the best beer in State College is at Anti-Fragile Brewing on East Calder Way. Definitely get down there. Check it out. If you're coming in next weekend for the Indiana game, Nate, we should probably get there at some point, Friday or something like that. We'll figure that out. T-Frank, you've been a regular. You started to become a regular there, even though I know you don't do the gluten, but it's been a good scene for you. People want to talk to you. People want to talk to Nate. People are scared by me, but that's fine. I get it. I get the same thing at airports. But it's been an awesome addition to downtown State College when they arrived in 2022, in April of 2022. It has grown leaps and bounds, and it's going to continue to grow as they get bigger. John's cheesesteaks are a spot, whether it's you're looking for a breakfast John with bacon or you're looking for a late night snack. It's quite good. Do recommend those personally. And I'm a big fan of the Pilsners that they've got on tap. I know Nate loves the hazies. I go with the Pilsners. I'm getting old in that regard. But regardless of the style of beer, I think it is the best beer in State College. So get down to Calder Way, check out the people, check out the cocktails, check out the kombucha. Just check out a little bit of everything because it's been a nice little gem that we've added to Downtown State College. We appreciate their support. We appreciate the support of our readers, listeners, viewers, whomever who have stopped by and told them that the Blue White Illustrated sent you. So we really appreciate that.
Yeah, make sure if you're there on Fridays, I try to get there in the early afternoon. So come say hi. Like if you see me on my phone, I'm just waiting around for someone to say hi. I'm there to talk to you guys. I'm there to support you for supporting us, for supporting our sponsor, and appreciate you guys want to make us part of the community. So yeah, if we're there on Friday, come over and say hi. We look like the people that look like this, and we'll have a good time talking Penn State football for a while. By the way, if you're checking out here on the YouTube channel or if you're listening on the podcast, just imagine I'm wearing a very sharp blue pullover. My rowback is one of my favorite things that we've added into the collection here. I'm not a golfer, as Nate knows. I love this pullover. Like golf apparel, if I could look and dress like a golfer, super awesome. Like I'm into that. And if you want to use, they have their game day collection, which they rolled out this year for fans. There's Penn State game day collection. Use promo code PSU20 at checkout to get 20% off your first purchase. Remember to use code PSU20 for your checkout to get 20% off your first purchase at Rowback. Appreciate them also being a sponsor here on the show and for the demonstration piece, which I know we all got some of those. I love them. The pants, like obviously I'm not going to stand up and show you the pants. Good. Pants are great, and I was a little nervous because I got green. I was like, I don't know if I can pull off green pants. And then I got compliments from one of the other reporters on the beat, who's in TV, by the way, and she would obviously know what looking good on television is supposed to look like. So, endorsed by television. So Rowback. Let's get into the coaching search. I love it.
No.
I love Mickey.
I'm wearing one now as well. The funny story about the pants is Nate got a pair of pants and he was texting me. He's like, I think I'm going to have to give these to you because they're like way, way too long. And I was like, sweet, free pants. Love it. And then he put them on and they fit perfectly. And I'm like, almost had free pants. So, but yeah, they're pretty great.
So, Fitz, I'm going to come back to you for the coaching search because you've been handling the hot board over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. Great time to remind you, subscribe here to the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. Like this video as we talk about some of the premium content over on the site. You can join us for just $1, get access for 7 days, and get all of the information. We can't talk about the whole article because there's a lot of great stuff in there. We just don't have enough time. We spent too much time talking about building 8-4 teams, so we need to move on and talk about what's going to happen with the next head coach. The way you couch this, instead of just giving the latest update on the names and horse race of who's rising to the top and who's falling off the list, I love the way you phrase this because it made it easy to understand. Buy, sell, and hold. So 3 categories where you're selling on some of these candidates, and then maybe
I put futures in there as well. So like the 4th would be like, hey, starting to hear some things on these guys. So like I think that's an important one too because everyone's out there. Sorry, go back into your question, and I'll just sit here and be quiet until you're done, and we'll be good to go.
It's a good point though, because that is the the names bubbling underneath the surface. That's, I think, a lot of the names that people know that have been out there publicly are part of the conversation as well. But then there's also those other ones. But I guess give me one interesting name from the buy, sell, or hold categories at the top of the article that you didn't expect to be in the category they were.
I think you look at me opening the thing, so I remember who's there because it was Friday. So let's talk about Kalen DeBoer, Alabama head coach. And hey, I probably won't be the first one to say this, but it makes very little sense that Penn State's would get its head coach from Alabama, right? But you've got a guy who is an outsider in the South. We've seen that matters in the South, right? Brian Kelly just got fired this week. Despite his family connections, he was not a Southerner there. You've got a special brand of identity with those guys. And Kalen DeBoer is not that guy. Like, and it's not I mean, he's a wonderful coach. He's absolutely awesome. And if you're like lining these guys up for, hey, this is probably your optimal choice, I think Kalen DeBoer would be pretty close to the top. I think he's a heck of a football coach, and that's why he's at Alabama. But we'll also add that them coming back to beat South Carolina, this Alabama has a shorter fuse than Penn State. And that's saying something because, Penn State's fuse is quite short, or as was proven this year. You've got a culture of winning, a culture of following Nick Saban, which is going to continue to be impossible to do, regardless that DeBoer has them, playing pretty well. But at the same time, an outsider who wins games, and hey, go back to Joe Moorhead at Mississippi State. Like, he won games, he won the Egg Bowl, he beat Ole Miss, and they still fired him. He's a Yankee, a little bit different with DeBoer, but like, you've got a situation where they want their own guys in there. And I totally get that. I think Penn State fans want a Northeast guy as well, or a guy with some sort of Northeast ties, if he wins, right? That's kind of the formula for all this. So DeBoer is a guy who makes $10.5 million right now, and he's going to continue to go up on that scale. But like, if Alabama would get tired of him for, say, like losing to South Carolina, then that would be an intriguing buy. And Penn State would be like tickled to death, I think, to get Kalen DeBoer. Now, I don't think that that's necessarily going to happen, but when you see these big names out there, Kalen DeBoer, Marcus Freeman, I mean, that they're, yes, probably not going to end up at Penn State, but it's worth the swing. Number one, you're getting your name out there. You're turning over every stone that you could possibly turn, including the huge stones. We didn't expect Penn State to spend $3 million on a defensive coordinator. They did so. But you're also finding a way to increase the budgets of competing athletic programs as well, right? You're driving up the price for everybody. I mean, look at Lane Kiffin. He's driving up the price for 3 different schools right now, probably 4, and it's very interesting to watch that part of it. So if you're Pat Kraft, you got to think big and then, have a wide, diversified board. We came into this thinking that Power 4 head coach was probably what you want. And from a leadership structural standpoint, I think that makes sense. You can bring a staff with you. You can have guys that are in place that are, you probably have your own GM. You probably have your own sort of structural program structure that makes a lot of sense. But also, you can't limit yourself to Power 4 head coaches because there's 48 of them or something like that. So it's very intriguing to see which direction this is going to go. You look at coordinators, you look at group of 5 coaches, and just because we thought that the Power 4 was the way to go, you can also work around by, you see Brian Hartline's name on there. He was on the list as a futures candidate. I think that you can make an argument for getting a guy like that in and helping to surround him with veteran coaches, because he's going to come without a staff. And I think that these are all things that are going to matter. And that goes into Nate's point of, it's going to take a while for this to come together, whether it's a guy that has his own staff or a guy that needs to make a staff work, because it's all dominoes falling into place.
I want to dig a little deeper on the Brian Hartline here, because I understand the allure of the guy who got all the receivers to Ohio State. And I guess, Fitz, what's the translation from that to head coach? Because he hasn't even gone through a full season as an offensive coordinator yet. So I get, like, Ohio State, your biggest rival, go steal from them, get the next up-and-coming guy. But this is very up-and-coming. This is on the bleedingest edge of not even through a full year as an offensive coordinator. And I'm not necessarily one that thinks you have to go get a seasoned coach who has been doing this for 10 years and has this winning track record, whatever. But you do want the earmarks of, like, leader, organizational skills, a bigger profile than just recruited Marvin Harrison Jr. to a place that had the reputation of, we put NFL receivers in the NFL in the first round, in the top 5, come here. Like, at a certain point, he built that, but also it then sustained itself, given they have quarterbacks and institutional things at that program that you can't just replicate at Penn State via reputation. So I guess, like, I'm not even trying to push back on the idea. I'm just trying to have a broader view of, like, how is this, like, how do you view this, and what is, like, that for you in terms of the criteria for a guy who's one of the next guys that isn't an established head coach?
I think there's so many ways that you can go to this. The guys that are Power 4 head coaches are Power 4 head coaches for a reason. It's because people in power think that they are good leaders and they are good organizational structure guys, all the stuff that we mentioned. But also, you can get there by making that leap. Dan Lanning went to Oregon from a coordinator job. Kenny Dillingham, who I'm very high on at Arizona State, even though they lost this weekend, is a guy that went from a coordinator program. So like the framework would be in place there. You could sell I think you could sell a coordinator to Penn State. It's just a matter of you're getting rid of the consistency of the last 12 years to bring in a guy who's not a sure thing. And you mentioned Hartline, calling plays and stuff. I don't know that stuff matters as much. Because I think that Hartline, kind of the conversation we had with Jaywan Sider is, does it matter what kind of coordinator he would be? Because I think he would be a better head coach than coordinator. And I think that Hartline might be in that mold because of the energy, because of all that stuff. Now, it takes a hell of a lot to get all that stuff down pat. He's got Ryan Day to learn from. Obviously, that's a good thing. He's been around some really great coaches, so that's another good thing as well. But yeah, it's never a sure thing. But hey, I guess bringing in a Power 4 coach isn't either. Like you're the guys that you're looking at right now, the guys that, probably aren't going to be alive in the college football playoff, or at least deep into the college football playoff. I love Mike Elko. I think Mike Elko would be a great fit, maybe an optimal fit for Penn State, but also he's winning a lot of games at Texas A&M, which, just fire the money cannon. That's how Texas A&M can do it. Shocked to see he makes like $7 million, which he's going to put in another wing on his house this offseason. Where that house is located, I don't know, but probably in College Station. But it's not never a sure thing here, man. Like you're looking at that, and I can make the argument, and because we look at this search with the same thing, and we're again somebody said on the board, people are pushing Matt Rule. I don't think it's people pushing Matt Rule as much as Matt Rule's going to be a part of this, whether you like it or not, because he is so connected to Pat Kraft, connected to Penn State. He's got all these things working for him in that situation. And I think I've seen a lot of backlash on that. And you can certainly say, his resume does not warrant being in there with Kalen DeBoer and being in there with some of these other guys. But at the same time, you also can't say, well, if he's in Penn State, he's definitely going to stink. Like that's kind of where I'm with that. So like, there's no sure thing here. Pat Kraft is, I don't want to say out on an island, but this is a massive, massive deal for him. He has to weigh building that program versus winning right away, being appealing football to build a stadium, essentially to get 700 million or 750 or whatever it's going to be to build a stadium. So there's a lot to balance here. And I think that taking time is fine. And that's, I know people people want to coach, stomp their feet and want to coach now, but like, I think that taking your time to find the best guy is going to, supplant recruiting. Probably not going to supplant the transfer portal, because you hopefully have a guy in by then. But
you need to have some players on the roster at some point to actually play football.
That are going to be good at playing football, whether they're already here, whether they're from the portal. But I think that's the challenge in front of him, and that's the challenge for everybody right now.
Nate, I know that touches on a lot of stuff you've been talking about recently. Anything you want to add into that? We can get on to Between the Lines, but I want to give you a chance to respond.
I think the general premise, right? And I'm not. People are fixating on coaches, which I understand. That's how this works, right?
In a coaching search.
Yeah, I know, but it misses the point. It misses the point. And the point is, and I've watched this movie. I saw how Pat Kraft and his team handled looking for a basketball head coach, right? And that's really the only comp for this situation for Pat at Penn State. And the way that worked, yes, was faster, but also when Micah Shrewsbury left, the idea was, this is Penn State, and like, this is deeply. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm trying to explain what it is, and what it is for Pat Kraft is, this is Penn State. We are better than you. Period. Right? If you're not at the top, Penn State should be at the top. Like, and it's not a like pound your chest like, oh, you stink. It's a Penn State has every right to believe its aspirations should be as high as any aspiration in any sport, anywhere on the planet. but specifically with football, right?
Yeah.
That they are going to be in this conversation, and not just in the conversation, but win it, right? This is Pat Kraft's version of the big game, right? It is Penn State pitted against, yes, the money that Texas A&M has to offer, the prestige and tradition that Alabama has to offer. Ole
LSU
Miss,
in
right?
the mix now.
LSU, whatever. But there was a time, and I'm just speaking personally here. There was a time when Penn State played Texas A&M in the 2007 Alamo Bowl. I want to say that was that game that Penn State played Texas A&M. There was no world at that time. That is less than 20 years ago. There is no world at that time where Texas A&M was considered remotely as a program in the same breath as Penn State in terms of tiers of college football. I understand things have changed. There has been an evolution, and Texas A&M has oil money and big, powerful backers that are enthusiastic. They did it when they hired away Jimbo Fisher. They have continued to do it in how they operate in the portal. They are willing to spend money, able to spend money, enthusiastic about spending money. None of that changes that Pat Kraft is going to say to himself and to anyone who will listen, Penn State is better than Texas A&M. That is what his argument is better tradition. He's going to argue better resources. I don't know that that's correct. He's going to argue it.
He did say elite level resources at least 3 times in that conversation about what he's looking for in the next head coach. So he does publicly believe that. Yes.
He publicly believes it. He will publicly sell it. And again, there is this conversation, this broad conversation that's happening with Penn State fans, with us, with everybody, right? Of, well, it's really unlikely. It's unlikely that Penn State's going to land any of these guys. Marcus Freeman is at Notre Dame. Mike Elko at Texas A&M, right? Kalen DeBoer at Alabama. He's, again, my impression, he is going to die trying to pluck a sitting head coach at a very successful currently program.
Well, why go out and develop a coach when you can go buy one? That is the transfer portal era in a nutshell.
That's the sport.
That's the sport.
That's the sport. And Penn State hasn't been part of it. Like that's kind of the reality. Like that, if you're looking at why James Franklin got fired, it's that James Franklin was not willing in certain respects to participate in that system. Pat wants to be in that system. He wants to come out and do what LSU did and steal Notre Dame's head coach, right? Like this happens. He wants to be part of that game. If he misses, that's okay, because there are lots of people out there who will qualify, but it's just in my perception, it is a very distinct tier that you are going to shift from after all of those first top options, the ones that everyone would say, man, no way. Kind of like Jim Knowles, right? Like, no way. He's leaving a guy. This is a guy that just won a national championship at Ohio State and left.
I guess you'd say the evidence is already there that he's willing to do that.
This is what he's trying to do.
Yeah.
What I'm curious about here in that scenario, and I think it's kind of, you've kind of alluded to it in certain spots, but this is such a big hire for Pat Kraft that he will, it's going to be almost beholden to him to go find those resources to overcompensate for the situation that they're in, because it is such a big deal for them, or for him to win this hire. So finding more money for NIL, finding more money for just basically everything that they do, just finding more money, and which is a really tough thing to do, but overcompensating for the situation that they're in, because it is such a big reflection on him and his tenure as athletic director. So I'm fascinated to see what that budget looks like. You saw it with Jim Knowles, like going from, Tom Allen making a lot of money to Jim Knowles making, a digit more. Like there's a lot going on there. But it's going to be fascinating to see what the investment looks like and how much of it is an overcompensation for just this change. And it's sort of buying the support for the new coach, because number one, whoever's hired is going to come in with a list of demands that is, hey, you got to spend. Like, and I think Pat's on board with that. And I think there's an alignment there. But the new guy is going to be like, I'm going to get what I want, because this is a job that I don't have to take, because I can make $12 million wherever I'm at right now. Because I think a lot of people, because of this cycle, are going to see, a lot more money added to their contracts. But I think you're going to see an infusion of resources. Does Penn State have that money right now? I don't know, but it's going to be just interesting to track over the next couple of years, I would say.
Can I two things. And I hear this a lot, and it remains just a disconnect for me. I hear fans saying, we're spending this much money and not seeing a return on what we're spending, right? In terms of the millions of dollars, right? Like, I don't understand what that means, because ticket prices haven't demonstrably gone up. Parking's a little more expensive. There have been incremental demands, but no fan that's in our chat or on our board has bankrolled any of this, right? Like has actually written the 7-figure check to make these things happen. Yes, like fans are important. It is built on the back of fans. Filling that stadium, 107,000 seats, is crucial. It is the differentiator with other college football teams. But like, I don't necessarily understand the fixation on where the money is coming from. Like, the bills will come due eventually, for sure. But right now, that is purely on Pat Kraft's shoulders to figure that out. Right. Like, that is Pat Kraft, that is Neely Bendapudi, that is the board of trustees. Like, that is their job to figure out where that money is coming from. But it is not. I have a little bit of a disconnect. Like, what difference does it make if the next coach makes $14 million and is the highest paid coach in college football on you, right? Like, what? And again, like, going back to the transfer portal, everybody's obsession with how much money Drew Aller makes. Like, Fitz, you said the next guy is going to have a list of demands. All of these players that Penn State thought were going to be good this year are paid under market. The next guy is going to have to pay and demand that the money is there to pay more for what's next. Like, the going rate, the top paid college football quarterbacks make more than Drew Aller did this year. And if you want that, if that's what is next for Penn State, and it's absolutely going to be the demand of the next head coach that he has those pieces to play with, it's going to cost a ton of money. That's what it is. It costs money.
And as I said the other day, listening to Nate lay some of these things out on the Blue White Illustrated message board in detail, I said, oh, now I get why the Big Ten is so thirsty for that venture capital money, because as Nate said, it has to come from somewhere. And if they're going to spend over the budget, they do need to find those resources to go in there, because unlike the NFL, without a salary cap, there is no end to the competitive hubris in this sport. And I understand that there is this tradition of fiscal responsibility. Joe Paterno made $1 million, and that was it, like, at the end of his career in his contract. And, like, everyone has that as a badge of pride in terms of the Penn State identity. And, like, as Nate has said, and we've said in the show, like, it's that's over. Like, that time has moved on. It is in the past. It is a chapter that has been written and closed. Last thing.
And then I'll put a ball. And this is literally it. Everything that this year cost is going to cost more next year. The new head coach will cost more. His coordinators will be just as expensive, if not more. His coaching staff will cost more. All of it will cost more. The players will cost more. The roster will cost more. There is no world where Penn State can expect to achieve the results that it wants to achieve on a budget that is below what it currently is. It's not going to happen. Otherwise, you need to get used to and accept what you already had.
Well, speaking of all of those things, let's transition to football and talk about what interim head coach Terry Smith had to say during his press conference yesterday, because believe it or not, there's football this weekend. Penn State plays Ohio State. So, Fitz, I'm going to start with you in this conversation, some of the things that Terry Smith had to say. There's less reading between the lines, although there is something I do want to talk about a little bit later in terms of what he was trying to say, but fairly clear what he thinks is going to take to win this game against Ohio State. So here's him with the opening game plan for Penn State football and how they can contend with the number one team in the country.
How do we go up and beat Ohio State, a number one team in the country? We have to do it together. We have to be as one. We cannot make mistakes. We have to be efficient with the football. The most important thing we have to do is be able to run the football. We have to outrush Ohio State to have a chance. Obviously, their defense is elite. They're number one defense in the country. They've got a lot of elite talent. They're big up front. They're fast in the middle, and they can cover on the back end. So, we have to be creative on offense to run the football, get Kaytron Allen going again. We have to find a way to get Nick Singleton going because we're going to need those two guys. They're our two best offensive weapons.
So, Fitz, I've watched Ohio State's defense.
No, go to Nate. He's
all right, Nate.
No. Keep going. What's your question?
I watched their defensive line. I think if there's one thing this defense does better than anything, it's stop the run. And and were you referring to once again the need to get Nick Singleton going there?
No, it's as he's laying it out. It's very transparent that he knows there's about one path to victory for Penn State in this game. Right? They don't have a quarterback because their quarterback is in a wheelchair right now. And it's not against Ethan Grunkmeyer. It's what you should have in terms of expectations going into this game. You've already has been established before Drew Aller got hurt, that the offensive line is problematic for Penn State this year. Inconsistent, just has not played to the level that anybody expected. Now you're going to put them against the best defensive line that they've faced this season. Am I right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. The receivers, he said it yesterday. The receivers, if not the best, in the argument for the best, right?
Yeah.
He's the receivers. They got to go to Kobe Howard and Tyzier Denmark because the three transfers that they got aren't open. And when they are, they're not catching the football, like not with the consistency that you need. So It is quite literally, there is one way to do this, and it is by keeping the football, by possessing the football. And he said it yesterday, Penn State has to run for more yards than Ohio State. Why? Because if Ohio State gets the football a lot, Ohio State's going to score the football a lot, right? There's only one way for this to work, for Penn State to emerge with a win on Saturday, and it is by grinding it out. It just so happens that Ohio State is really good at stopping the one thing that Penn State thinks it needs to do, and two, is going to be willing to live with the consequences of an error that leads to them getting beat over the top. Right. He said
there's much less threat, right? And he did say it'll be easier to run the ball or throw the ball this week against Ohio State, which that hit my ear very interestingly, and I have been watching them, and they play. So I'm having flashbacks to watching the Patriots in the mid 2010s of like, wow, they play so much single high safety. There's so much room to run in the secondary if you can get there, and that's been the problem for Penn State and for all the other teams that have played them so far.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, you're looking at a situation where you can catch them. I don't even say catch them off guard, because that's not what it is. Like it's just trying to take advantage of the soft spot that they might have. Like it's a great defense. I mean, it was one of the best, if not the best defense in the country. You're looking at the opportunity to basically flip the script on what we said in the first 3 games. Remember the scouting report on the other teams in the first 3 games of the season? It was They're going to shorten the game as much as possible, sit on the ball, run the clock down. And that's where Penn State's at right now, which is terrifying in its own regard, considering this was a 4.5 point spread in the summer. Now it's a 3 touchdown spread. But that's indicative of where both teams are. And Nate's right. You almost got to play keep away here and mitigate your losses, I guess is the way to put that. And Kaytron Allen, I think can find some spots. It's going to come down to that offensive line, how physical they're able to be, because both sides of the ball up front this year just getting caved in, and that's not that's not the way to go about it.
Part of the analysis against Iowa was that Penn State ran the ball better. I did go into that game thinking that Penn State could run the ball if they could move those defensive tackles, who weren't the biggest guys in the world for Iowa, and they were able to do that to an extent. They also used a 2-quarterback system and a bunch of new wrinkles that nobody had seen before. Iowa was not prepared for, and they were able to be successful there. There is no question, there's no doubt in my mind that this defensive line, with the way they play, because they will cycle between even and odd fronts like water, super fluid. I don't know how Penn State can move them off the line of scrimmage. I have not seen that done successfully so far this year. Even if they're not like all NFL players, these aren't all first-round draft picks necessarily. I don't think they have a great pass rush. Even though the metrics all say that they do, I don't see a lot of true pass rushers. I don't know how they're going to run the ball. And that brings up the passing game again, which we've already talked about, but we got to get to it again, because if there's one area that I do want to get your read on, it's kind of, did Terry yesterday let something slip and then have to walk it back, because he has, as James Franklin has done, not publicly thrown anybody under the bus about any of the aspects of the offense or defense, except he did say something about Andy Kotelnicki here, which we're going to get into.
We've got these young receivers. We're going to give those guys an opportunity to try to inject some life into the pass group. Ethan Grunkemeyer, new quarterback at the helm. There's just a lot of dynamics with the pass game. I do think we'll be able to throw the ball a little bit better this week at Ohio State. I'm demanding from Coach Kotelnicki that, he's creative in the pass game, in the sense that, we don't want to throw the ball so much horizontally. We want to throw it vertically. Maybe demanding is probably not the right word. When I go to him, I'm saying, hey, listen, this is what I'm thinking. And he's like, yeah, you know what? I was thinking the same thing. Like, we're on the same page. We're thinking alike. In this profession, when you lose 4 games in a row, we're all humble. We're all trying to find the problem and find the solution. And, we're just working toward that and trying to figure out what's the best thing for us to move forward. And Coach K's been awesome with that.
Fitz, what did you think? So those are two separate answers, because he was asked to follow up about demanding something of Andy Kotelnicki on offense, of throwing the ball down the field. I've got a rant that I've got to get out of me here in a little bit, but I do want to get. Do you think that was kind of let it slip of his real feelings about the offense of the passing game, or is that just a misspeak, and then he wanted to make sure that everyone knows he supports his offensive coordinator, and this is not something where what's happening externally of everyone thinking that Andy Kotelnicki is a bum is how he feels internally as well?
I think he's a defensive coach that's watching offense that has kind of, just kind of run in place for a while. That the whole east to west thing was, or the horizontal passing game and everything like that was interesting to me, because you're looking at a team that, I don't want to say refused to go downfield, because they've done it at times, but also it's been a lot of kind of standing in place and just throwing it to the side and nothing's happening and all that. And it's frustrating to watch, right? And I think as a defensive coach who has watched his defense, and maybe not so much this year, but his defense be the main cog for Penn State's success for so long, despite its offense, I think that's sort of came out in that. And then he kind of walked it back a little bit. So yeah. And I think also when you take a look at, I think we'll probably look too much into it'll be easier to throw on Ohio State. I think that's more of a reference to, okay, Grunkmeyer had 3 practices or 4 practices before Iowa, and then he got a full bye week, and then he got another week of practice to prepare for Ohio State. So I think that's more schematic than, hey, we'll be able to throw on Ohio State, because I don't know if that's going to happen, but it gives Grunkmeyer a wider array of throws that he can possibly make. And he's young enough for, maybe it's good that he doesn't know everything about what's coming. I think that there's always, when you throw a guy in there, that whether he be a backup, whether he be a young guy, there's always the more you know situation can also come back to hurt you. So, for Penn State's sake, you hope for Ethan Grunkmeyer that, he's just able to be a little bit more free back there.
And that is a aspect of this passing game that I think he did show last game, in both good and bad ways. Of he played more free. He's a dude who will grip it and rip it, as they say in the sport. And sometimes he's ripping it to the wrong part of the field based on the coverage and the receiver isn't there. And he throws a beautiful punt to the 3-yard line. Okay, so there's no end to this, so I'm just going to stop talking at some point, so you guys need to be ready to jump in and save the flow of the show. Last week, we talked to Andy Kotelnicki, right? And so I wrote some things about Andy Kotelnicki, and I feel like there's a burden on me right now of how I feel about, this is everyone knows, it is very obvious, and it is a fact that Andy Kotelnicki is terrible. Jim A. donated earlier to the channel, and I'm putting this out here only as an example of what people think of Andy. This is the general discourse of Andy Kotelnicki, is that he's a bum. I'm not even going to read it because it's obviously insulting in a personal way, and that's stupid. We've swung too far. This always happens. Yes, this is a disaster of a season, and I don't think that Andy Kotelnicki is innocent of blame, and this falls on his shoulders as far as this offense being ineffective. But I have had multiple conversations on the internet and otherwise that he is the worst offensive coordinator in America. He doesn't know what he's doing. His offenses suck. His passing game suck. This is a guy who at multiple stops has created explosive passing plays in the run and the passing game. He isn't generally a good offensive coordinator. This level, adjusting to the Big Ten, these have all been problems. He has also been operating without, his best tools. And he has not iterated the way that I expected, and I think the way that James Franklin expected, of a guy who said, I can come in and rebuild an offense every single year. Those are all fair things. But we're sitting here now, and it is the worst hire ever in the history of college football. And that's also factually, that's incorrect. We are so far into our feelings, and I'm talking now as the Penn State ecosystem. The questions are coming out as this indictment of personal character. And I do have my problems in terms of his view of the passing game and some of the things that he said last week that I raised in articles. But it has swung so far into the whipping boy effect of this is all wrong, when Nate, you have said this multiple times. Fitz, the reason they don't throw down the field is their receivers are slow. Traber Pena came in here as a guy who's a slot receiver. He's got some nice vertical ability in an offense that's like an air raid where if he's one-on-one with a nickel safety, he can get deep, but he's not a deep threat receiver. Kyron Hudson, a jump ball superstar that is not a jump ball superstar. He does not have great hands, and he does not consistently catch those contested catches down the field the way that they set him up for in this season. There was an overestimation of their talent and a mischaracterization of what those guys could do. So to get Traber Pena into the offense, Andy Kotelnicki talked to you, Nate, this summer about guys who are elite at running after the catch. That is not in my estimation of watching him on film, Traber Pena got the yards that were there and did not break tackles at Syracuse. They got him yards. He was able to weave through the defense, yes. But to say that's going to be what he does at Penn State, and that's what they've tried to have him as, that jet sweep guy, is a fundamental mischaracterization of his skills. But it's not like they have the guy to do the jet sweep on the roster that was ready and available. It's not like they had the guys to put the offense together in the way that they wanted. So the short passing game, these lateral moves, they don't have a deep threat. And yes, you're putting Kobe Howard and Tyser Denmark in the game to hope they can be guys that separate down the field and get open. Because the guys that you recruited through the portal, we talked about this. They don't have the speed. And whatever you want to say as far as what speed is, a 40 time, a shuttle drill, whatever it is, the combination of skills that get them open in the passing concepts is not there. And so if we're going to say, like, you don't get blood from a stone, as the old saying in the Bible goes. So there you go. That's my thoughts on the Andy Kotelnicki situation.
Quote, I think there are a lot of really good ball carriers on the perimeter now. Guys that when you get them the ball, they do really good things. I think there's guys who make some really good contested catches down the field. And I'm fired up for them. I really, really am. Now, question, T. Frank. Did Penn State try to throw the ball vertically in the non-conference portion of the schedule?
They were thirsty for it. It was a desperate attempt to get it deep. They were forcing it to the point that in the game, which game was it? The FIU game, Aller, like, it was all up in his head, in my opinion. So yes, they absolutely were desperate to get Devontae Ross, the one guy who, as Fitz said, maybe he's not as fast as some of the guys they had last year, is their deep threat. And look how that went this year.
Yeah, how did it go? How did it go when they tried to do that?
I believe Aller was 1 for 9 or 1 for 7. He completed one deep pass.
Okay.
In those games specifically. I may have that wrong because I was looking at some specific coverages. That might have been just against cover 3, but that was all they were getting. So yeah, it wasn't going well.
And then what do defensive coordinators do when they see that?
Oh, they just flood the underneath zones. You don't have to do a whole lot. You just flood the underneath zones. You take away the lateral passes and the run at the same time. And so you are put in a situation where you're putting them into a box. You're caging an animal into the corner.
It really sounds like this isn't that complicated.
It's not.
To me.
No.
To me. The book is out. The blueprint is out. Now they're doing it with not as experienced of a quarterback, right? It's just all there, right? This isn't a there's no there. This is a it's all right in front of you. And
jump in here. One last thing about that, of the last game plan and the question of two quarterbacks. To get the offense breathing room and space and running room, the quarterback option forces the defense to allocate resources away from the box, even if they're in underneath zones. And the more you spread them laterally, the more threats you have going divergent ways from the original play and the quarterback play. Then you have this opportunity to have seams in the defense, even if they're playing cover 3 and they've got an extra safety underneath. And then from there, the biggest flaw in this offense is they don't have a passing threat off of that. And now, with the status of Jackson Smolik being a big old question mark, which we can all kind of like raise an eyebrow at, that it's probably not a question mark, they don't even have that going into this game. I don't believe they have that option in the game to generate space in the run game. And so, yeah, like by the way, the point of that is that was the problem in the beginning of the season. Penn State was trying to run traditional plays, just like Ohio State's offense is doing. They're trying to run plays because their quarterback isn't an option threat. And so Ohio State's talent is capable of doing that. Penn State's offensive line talent regressed because they didn't have that option to take bodies, eyes, and pressure away from the run fits. And so you were left with standing quarterback Drew Aller trying to be a running quarterback Drew Aller, and it was just a misfit from the very beginning because even though they tried to design around Aller, the pieces didn't work the same way.
But it might work for us.
Yes.
Okay.
By the way,
that's the end of the show.
By the way, and Terry is getting a lot of love. He deserves a lot of love. This is an impossible place for anyone to be in. He's the guy that's out there, and this is his show right now, and he deserves a ton of support and commendation for what he's doing. He said yesterday that he and Kotelnicki were on the same page with using two quarterbacks last game.
Yeah.
Right. That was not a move that was made in isolation. Like Kotelnicki got a ton of blowback of it, like this idea of using two quarterbacks moving forward. Like there are reasons behind this, right? There is a rationale to why they're doing this, and it has consensus on the coaching staff. And the reasons behind all of it are deficiencies, right? Just areas of weakness that they were not able to make up for. This is not an I told you so. This is not an anything. The receivers, the swap, right? All summer, it was, man, Penn State really upgraded its receivers. Like that was the national conversation. ESPN feeded into it. Everybody was on board with that. And to a certain extent, James Franklin and Andy Kotelnicki played into it, right? I don't know that they played it up as much as the national hype, but they played into it as well. And there was a backside reality to it that it a net neutral at best, right? And arguably worse, right? And so you
certainly had to be different, and was not.
Had to be different
enough,
and it wasn't different enough. They're and again, like this is why we get caught in these boxes. Penn State is 0-4 in its last 4 games. Absolutely. One of them was lost in double. Like this is not putting lipstick on a pig, so I'm just going to get out in front of this. But they're arguably 9-ish plays away from being unbeaten right now, right? Like even with all of the things that have gone wrong, I know Fitz, I know nobody wants to hear it, but
they're only 4 wins away from being 7-0.
4 wins that have been decided on isolated plays, right? And they're like, again, not good enough, right? Overall, not good enough. 100% not good enough. But the things that happened last year where the ball bounced in Penn State's favor, like I'm literally just quoting Terry Smith here.
Yeah.
The things that happened last year that went in Penn State's favor did not this year. And if Penn State had won those games, it would have just been, man, they were fortunate. And that would have been correct. They were fortunate to have won those games. It's just a lack of recognition at how fortunate they were to win the same games last year. But like, guess what?
What?
That's college football now.
It is.
Get used to it. Like the whole thing, the whole mindset of 10-2, but can never beat the good teams. Like all that's gone. It does not matter anymore. All of this parity is coming to college football. You see it in the like everybody puts up the list of teams that were in the top 25 to start the season that are no longer in the top 25. And everybody's like, oh my goodness, like how crazy is this? It's not crazy. This is what's going to happen every single year. It demonstrates again the irrelevancy of preseason rankings, right? Like this whole notion that you should know at the beginning of the year, it's just not real. And people are going to have to get comfortable with the discomfort of not knowing what's going to happen before a season starts. Because outside of Ohio State this season, it's not.
I've been told multiple times that the only time you're growing is when you're uncomfortable. And being comfortable with being uncomfortable is how you grow, or some other guru stuff to say. So, Nate, thank you for dropping some wisdom on us here at the end of the show. Fitz, appreciate your time today. Awesome show. This was jam-packed full of good information and insight. We'll be back tomorrow to do some more of that. We'll get into more of the actual Ohio State-Penn State matchup. And then, of course, Thursday we'll have a recruiting show, which will be super fun. Everyone's going to be happy about that. And, of course, our predictions, game predictions, score predictions coming up at the end of the Thursday show. Get locked and loaded because we've got more Penn State football coming up this week from Blue White Illustrated here on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. I'm Thomas Ryan Carr for Nate Bauer and Sean Fitz. We'll talk to you then.